Why was everyone staring at her like she didn't belong? The air at Fort Crescent's Longshot Range shimmered with heat. It was barely 900 hours, and the California sun had already begun to cook the concrete pads beneath 20 gleaming Barrett rifles. 20 Navy SEALs stood shoulder to shoulder, relaxed but coiled, the kind of confidence that came from years of being told you were the best there was. And for most of them that was true, until today. Captain Olivia Brennan adjusted the brim of her patrol cap and watched the dust swirl around her boots. Every grain felt like a challenge. Beside her, Lieutenant Priya Desai stood motionless, her notepad resting against one arm, eyes fixed on the range as if she were studying something only she could see. Two Army officers surrounded by 20 of America's elite. The math didn't favor them, not yet. A laugh rippled through the SEAL line. It wasn't loud, but it carried, the kind of mockery that travels effortlessly between people who share the same pride. "You sure you want to try, sweetheart?" someone muttered, voice dripping with amusement. "That rifle kicks pretty hard." Olivia didn't look up. She'd heard worse. From men who thought rank or reputation shielded them from accountability. From people who measured capability by muscle mass or myth. But she'd learned long ago, the less you defend yourself, the more silence works in your favor. Commander Garrett Stone, the man in charge, crossed his arms as he stepped forward. Sunlight caught the edges of his sunglasses, a mirror of authority and habit. 20 years of deployments had carved lines into his face, but not humility. "Appreciate you making the trip out to observe today's exercise," he said, his voice carrying over the hum of the range fans. "We don't usually open our advanced marksmanship demos to outside personnel, but Admiral Thornton asked that we make an exception." The word observe landed like a slap. Not participate, not collaborate, observe. Olivia nodded, her tone perfectly neutral. "We're grateful for the opportunity, Commander. The Admiral speaks highly of your team." "As she should," Stone replied. He gestured toward the line of men prepping their rifles. "These operators represent the best of the best. 15 years of combined experience on average, multiple combat tour. When it comes to precision marksmanship under field conditions, there's simply no comparison." Priya said nothing. Her gaze drifted across the range, the flags marking wind direction, the shimmer of heat distorting targets, the hum of air thick with mirage. She saw data, patterns, the silent language of distance and pressure. Her mind was already measuring it long before a single shot was fired. Beside Stone, Chief Petty Officer Blake Sutherland leaned in with a smirk. "Think the Army sent their poster girls to take notes, maybe write a report about inclusion." Stone didn't laugh, but he didn't stop it either. The range safety officer, Master Sergeant Diego Ramirez, approached with a tablet. "Ready to begin, Commander. Standard course, 3 targets at 1,200, 1,800, and 2,400 meters. No spotter assistance." Stone nodded, then turned to the two women. "The observation area, over there. Good vantage point to see what real precision shooting looks like." Priya's pen paused for half a heartbeat. Olivia's face didn't move. "Thank you, Commander," she said simply, and the two women walked toward the shaded platform without another word. As the first SEAL took his firing position, the sound of the Barrett split the air, sharp, thunderous, echoing against the distant mountains. Ramirez's voice followed seconds later through the speaker system. "Hit, 1,200 meters, 2 inches left of center." The next shot came tighter. The third a miss. One by one, the SEALs cycled through the line. They hit close targets with practiced precision. 1,800 meters harder, 2,400 impossible. Each operator hit 2, missed 1. A few didn't hit the last target at all. By the time the 10th SEAL stepped back, sweat streaked the dust on their faces. Pride intact, but edges showing. Not one of them had hit that farthest steel. It shimmered like a ghost through the mirage, taunting them with impossible distance. Stone approached the shaded platform where Olivia and Priya stood quietly, both writing notes. "Learning anything useful?" he asked, condescension finally unmasked. Olivia looked up, her gray eyes unreadable. "Your team shows excellent fundamentals, Commander. The 1800-meter accuracy was impressive." Stone tilted his head. "Not the 24. "Nearly impossible today," she said calmly. "Crosswinds are unpredictable." He smiled thinly. "That's what makes the difference between shooters and snipers, but maybe from your position it doesn't look that hard." He wanted a reaction. He got one: silence. Then Olivia stood. "I'd be happy to attempt the course, Commander," she said, "as long as I can use your team's equipment." The range went still. Even the wind seemed to pause. Sutherland muttered, "This ought to be good." A few quiet bets followed, exchanged like whispers of arrogance. 50 says she doesn't hit a damn thing. Ramirez moved to set up a Barrett at the far end of the line. Olivia walked calmly, the sound of her boots against concrete somehow louder than all their mockery combined. Priya followed, expression unchanged, the quiet echo of partnership forged somewhere far more dangerous than this California range. When Olivia reached the weapon, she didn't hesitate. Hands checked the chamber. Magazine inspected. Bipod deployed. Movements precise, rehearsed, not learned from manuals but carved into muscle memory through survival. "Safety on the left," a young SEAL called helpfully. "Red means ready." "Appreciate it," Olivia said without looking up. "Same as the M24 system, and the M110 I used during Crimson Dagger." The range fell silent, even Stone blinked. Crimson Dagger, a classified joint operation whispered about in debrief circles but never spoken aloud. The SEALs who'd heard of it knew only one thing: it wasn't a story. It was a nightmare mission, and anyone who'd been there had bled for it. Priya unfolded a compact rangefinder beside her, eyes narrowing against the mirage. "Wind's shifting right 2 knots, she murmured, voice barely audible. Olivia nodded once, settled behind the rifle. Stone folded his arms. "Any time, Captain." The first shot cracked across the desert. 3 seconds later, Ramirez's voice came through the speakers, disbelief breaking through professionalism. "Hit 1,200 meters, center mass." A murmur swept through the SEALs. Coincidence, they thought, a lucky start. But as Olivia adjusted her scope and slowed her breathing, there was no luck in her eyes, only stillness. The second shot came. Another pause. "Hit 1,800, dead center." This time the murmurs stopped. Stone's jaw tightened. "Let's see the 24. Olivia didn't answer. Her focus tunneled down the scope, the world narrowing to a mirage-shifted horizon. Her breath slowed until even her pulse seemed to obey. The crosshairs floated, settled, moved with the wind like they were part of it. The Barrett roared one final time. The silence that followed was total, thick, breathless waiting. Then Ramirez's voice. "Hit 2,400, center mass." No one moved. Even the air felt heavier. The target that 20 men had failed to touch now sang, with the sound of a perfect impact. Stone's voice cracked slightly. "Check it again." Ramirez swallowed hard. "Already did, sir. 3 shots, 3 hits." Olivia rose, calm, collected, the embodiment of composure earned through fire. She removed her ear protection and turned, expression unreadable. "Thank you, Commander," she said softly. Priya stepped forward almost casually. "My turn, if you don't mind." Sutherland blinked. "You both shoot like that." "Only one way to find out," Priya replied, tone smooth as glass. What followed wasn't shooting, it was art. Where Olivia was instinct, wind, breath, body, Priya was calculation, cold precision. 3 shots. 3 hits. 6 perfect impacts between them. A level of consistency that defied logic, defied ego. The SEALs stood stunned. Even the smirks had died. One of them finally said what everyone was thinking. This is impossible." Olivia turned, calm as ever. It's not impossible, it's training, repetition, experience. A new voice echoed from the range entrance. I can answer that, Senior Chief. All heads turned. A man in service dress strode forward, insignia gleaming, Colonel Thomas Kirkland, JSOC. The kind of man whose presence changed atmospheres. Stone snapped to attention. Sir, we weren't expecting. You weren't supposed to, Kirkland interrupted. Sometimes the best evaluations happen when people don't know they're being evaluated. Murmurs rippled across the ranks. The SEALs exchanged glances, evaluated. Kirkland faced them. Show of hands, who's heard of Operation Nightfall? Silence. Operation Copper Valley. Nothing. The Phantom Pair. Two hands, Callahan and Washington, rose slowly. Their eyes widened as realization hit. They're real, Kirkland said, and they're standing in front of you. He turned toward Olivia and Priya. Captain Olivia Brennan, Lieutenant Priya Desai, 17 confirmed eliminations of high-value targets, 9 successful hostage interdictions, Silver Star, Distinguished Service Cross. They developed the tactical methodologies your entire branch will soon be training under. The range went deathly quiet. Stone's confidence cracked into something far more human, disbelief, than shame. They weren't sent to observe your team, Kirkland continued. You were sent to be evaluated by them. Stone's throat worked before sound returned. Sir, That's the point, Commander, Kirkland said softly. If you'd known who they were, your behavior would have been different, but it shouldn't have been. The words cut deeper than any reprimand could. The Joint Special Operations Command is launching a new integrated sniper program. Captain Brennan and Lieutenant Desai will serve as primary instructors. You and selected members of your team are invited to participate. Stone nodded slowly, a soldier facing the truth. Understood, sir, we'll be there. Kirkland looked between them, men who doubted, women who'd proven and left them in silence. The California heat pressed harder, but it wasn't the sun making the SEALs sweat. It was the weight of realization that excellence had just changed shape before their eyes. Olivia glanced toward the stunned men. For what it's worth, she said quietly, your fundamentals are solid. What you saw today isn't about gender or superiority. It's about training under conditions you've never faced. She paused, her eyes softened, and that's what we're here to share. As the SEALs stood there, pride broken, respect dawning, a single thought seemed to echo through the heat. Sometimes dignity doesn't shout. It simply takes aim and hits every target. What do you say to the people you just humbled? Commander Garrett Stone stood in the echoing quiet of long-shot range long after the last echo of Colonel Kirkland's voice faded. The California sun had started to drop, throwing long shadows across the firing line. The same line where, just hours earlier, he'd mocked 2 Army officers who turned out to be the most precise shooters he'd ever seen. The men around him hadn't moved for minutes. They weren't sure if they should stand at attention, apologize, or disappear. Every one of them had been taught that respect was earned through performance, and today, performance had rewritten everything they thought they knew. Beside the control shelter, Captain Olivia Brennan spoke quietly with Lieutenant Priya Desai and Sergeant Ramirez, going over notes for the new training program. Her tone was measured, businesslike, not vindictive, not triumphant, just professional. The same quiet professionalism that had silenced 2 decades of SEAL arrogance in less than 10 minutes. Sutherland exhaled through his teeth. Well, he muttered, that was a career moment. Yeah, Stone replied, his voice hollow, just not the kind we usually brag about. He watched as Olivia handed Ramirez a data pad and pointed toward the target displays. No wasted movement, no theatrics, just control. He'd seen men crack under less pressure, but she moved like the chaos around her didn't even register. You think she's for real? Sutherland asked quietly, not mockingly this time, just trying to understand. Stone didn't answer. He didn't have to. He'd seen her hands on that rifle. The way she adjusted for crosswind, her breathing measured down to fractions of seconds. That wasn't showmanship. That was mastery. By the time the SEALs began to pack up, the laughter from earlier felt like something that had happened in another lifetime. Pride had been replaced by something far less comfortable, reflection. Later, in the base briefing room, the air was thick with unspoken tension. Stone stood at the front while his team took seats, the fluorescent lights buzzing faintly overhead. He looked at their faces, proud men now forced to confront something deeper than competition. "All right," he began. "Let's skip the ego. We all saw what happened out there." No one moved. "We got outshot," he said simply. "By two operators we didn't take seriously. That's on us." A long pause. "Starting tomorrow, we train under them. Not beside, not above, under. JSOC says it's mandatory, and frankly, I'm glad it is. Because what they showed today isn't luck or politics. It's capability." Chief Callahan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Sir, did you know who they were?" "No," Stone admitted, "but I should have recognized what I was seeing." Washington rubbed the back of his neck. 17 confirmed eliminations, sir. 9 hostage extractions. That's another league." "Exactly," Stone said. "So, if any of you are thinking this is a stunt or some kind of diversity experiment, get that thought out of your head right now. You don't get those numbers without being lethal." The room was silent for a long time. Hayes, one of the youngest, finally spoke up. "So we're what students now?" Stone nodded slowly. "Yeah, Lieutenant, that's exactly what we are." Outside, the last of the sun dipped below the horizon, turning the base to bronze and shadow. Somewhere downrange, the echo of that final Barrett shot still lingered in Stone's mind. 3 hits, 3 confirmations. It wasn't luck. It was message. That night, while the SEALs filed back to their quarters, Olivia and Priya sat in a small, air-conditioned office that smelled faintly of gun oil and desert dust. The room was functional: 2 chairs, a desk, a humming fluorescent light that flickered every few seconds. Priya glanced up from her tablet. "You think he'll come around?" Olivia looked up, her eyes soft but distant. "Stone, yeah, eventually." "You sound sure." "He's proud," she said, setting her pen down. "But he's not stupid. He saw what happened out there. The man knows skill when he sees it, even if it bruises him." Priya smiled faintly. "You think we humiliated them?" "No," Olivia said. "Reality did. We just held up the mirror." Silence filled the room again. Outside, the sound of distant laughter from the barracks carried faintly through the window, the kind of nervous laughter soldiers use when they don't know how to feel. Olivia leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes for a moment. "You ever get tired of this part?" Priya looked over. "Which part?" "The part where we prove we belong." Priya exhaled slowly. "Every time, but it never stops mattering." For a moment, neither spoke. The air conditioner kicked on with a soft hum. "Tomorrow, 1400 hours, Olivia murmured, opening her eyes again. "Stone wants to meet, discuss training schedule." "Do you think he's doing it because he wants to or because he has to?" "Doesn't matter," Olivia replied. "We'll give him the same respect we'd give anyone who shows up." Priya studied her friend for a long moment. "You really believe in this program, don't you?" Olivia nodded. "Because it's not about us anymore. It's about what comes next. About proving that capability has no gender, no branch, no stereotype, just performance." By the next afternoon, the sun was merciless again. Inside the command office, Stone and Sutherland arrived precisely at 1400 hours. Their uniforms were crisp, their posture deliberate, controlled professionalism, with a hint of discomfort they couldn't quite hide. "Captain, Lieutenant," Stone greeted, voice steady. "Thank you for making time." "Of course," Olivia replied, gesturing to the chairs. "Please sit." The meeting began with logistics, training schedules, range setup, curriculum flow. But as the minutes passed, the conversation began to shift. Stone started asking real questions about methodology, tactics, purpose. The defensive tone he'd carried earlier had melted into curiosity. "How do you even start teaching something like environmental perception?" he asked. "You can't just hand someone intuition." Priya smiled slightly. "No, but you can train their senses to stop ignoring what's always there." Sutherland leaned forward, skeptical but respectful. "You're saying you can teach someone to feel the wind?" "Not feel," Olivia corrected softly. "Read. It's not mystical. It's data, just not the kind a computer gives you." For nearly 2 hours they spoke. The discussion turned from structure to philosophy, from equipment lists to mindset. Slowly, the dynamic in the room shifted. No longer superior and subordinate, but professionals trading knowledge earned in different wars. When the meeting ended, Stone stood by the door, visibly weighing something unspoken. "Captain," he said finally, "Lieutenant, I owe you both an apology for this morning, for the assumptions I made." Olivia met his gaze, unflinching. "Apology accepted, Commander. What matters now is where we go from here." He nodded once, the kind of nod that comes from a man swallowing his pride. "We'll be ready tomorrow, 800 sharp." After the door closed, Priya exhaled a quiet laugh. "Think he means it?" "Time will tell," Olivia said. "But he took the first step, that's more than most." That evening the base settled into its night routine, floodlights flickering on, vehicles rumbling in the distance, the smell of salt from the Pacific carried on the wind. Inside the SEAL team quarters, conversation buzzed like static. Stories were spreading, embellished, analyzed, half-believed. "6 perfect hits," someone said near the lockers. "No spotter, no tech." "Bullshit," another replied, though his tone was weak. "No one hits 2,400 clean in this heat." "Ask Ramirez," Washington said quietly. "He confirmed every shot." That shut the room down. Washington wasn't the type to spread myths. He sat across from Senior Chief Callahan, reviewing a folder of materials marked confidential. JSOC training program, integrated precision operations. "You ever hear of phantom pair before today?" Washington asked. Callahan grunted. "Rumors, training camp legends. 2 ghosts that did what full teams couldn't, thought it was just storytelling." "Not anymore," Washington said. He flipped another page, environmental adaptation drills, acoustic triangulation exercises, manual ballistic calculation. It looked less like marksmanship and more like a hybrid of science, survival, and art. "We treated them like observers," Washington said quietly, "and they were evaluating us." Callahan closed the file. "Then the best thing we can do now is show up tomorrow ready to learn." He looked at the younger operator squarely. "You want to know the difference between a good soldier and a great one. A good soldier performs. A great one adapts." Washington nodded slowly. "Yes, Chief." Across the base, Olivia sat by her desk again, scrolling through training notes. Priya was cleaning a scope beside her, the rhythmic click of metal on cloth filling the silence. "First day's always the hardest," Priya murmured. "Usually," Olivia agreed. "But they know who we are now. That might make tomorrow easier." "Or harder," Priya countered. "They'll expect perfection. We're not superhuman." "No," Olivia said softly. "We just learned how to survive when nothing else worked." Priya stopped wiping and met her gaze. "Some of them will never accept us." "I know," Olivia replied. "But that's not the point. The point is we give them what we learned, and what they do with it, that's their choice." Outside, the wind picked up again, carrying a faint taste of salt and sand. Olivia stood, stretching, then turned off the desk lamp. "Get some rest. Tomorrow, going to be a long day." Priya smiled faintly. "It always is." They left the room together, footsteps echoing down the dim hallway, 2 silhouettes against the corridor light. Different paths, same mission. The next dawn would bring new tests, not of accuracy but of understanding. Because what they were about to teach wasn't just shooting. It was seeing, in ways most soldiers never learned to see. And somewhere deep inside, Olivia knew, this was the real war. Not against enemies with rifles, but against blindness born of certainty. The kind that can only be defeated by patience, by proof, by quiet excellence. What happens when the best realize they still have something left to learn? Before sunrise, Fort Crescent was wrapped in quiet fog. The Pacific air rolled in low, turning the firing range into a muted landscape of shadows and silver. The silence wasn't peace, it was tension waiting to break. By 5:30, the first headlights appeared beyond the gate, cutting through the mist. Captain Olivia Brennan was already there. She moved across the range like someone who'd lived a lifetime in places like this, early, precise, unhurried. She checked the firing positions, noted the equipment stacks, adjusted markers where the wind had shifted overnight. Every detail mattered, because what was about to begin wasn't a demonstration anymore. It was transformation or nothing. Lieutenant Priya Desai arrived minutes later, carrying a heavy case of modified optical equipment. Her hair was tied back, her expression calm, clinical. "Ramirez came through," she said. "8 custom scopes ready, manual calibration only." "Good," Olivia replied. "Let's strip away the comfort first." By 600, the range didn't look like a firing line anymore. It looked like a battlefield classroom, uneven ground, irregular firing positions, target silhouettes scattered at unpredictable distances. Some hidden behind debris, others visible only through thermal distortion. This wasn't a test of perfect aim. It was a test of awareness, the kind that didn't rely on electronics or ideal conditions. "Everything's set," Ramirez confirmed, checking his tablet. "You're really going to make them start with this?" Olivia gave him a small, knowing smile. If they don't unlearn first, they'll never learn anything new. By 6:30, the SEALs began to arrive. Washington and Hayes came first, carrying their rifles and gear, their faces showing a mix of curiosity and caution. Callahan followed old-school calm, his gaze sweeping the range with quiet appraisal. Then came Brooks, the analytic one, eyes narrowed as if dissecting the setup. And finally, Commander Stone and Chief Sutherland, walking side by side, measured, professional. They were ready, or so they thought. Olivia waited until everyone was assembled. The fog had thinned now, revealing the harsh, pale light of early day. "Good morning, gentlemen," she began. Her tone wasn't loud, but it carried, steady and composed. "Before we begin, I want to make something clear." She paused, scanning their faces. "This isn't about proving the Army is better than the Navy, or that women can do what men can't. This is about one thing: expansion. Expanding your perception, your tactics, your capability when everything else fails. That's it." Her words hung in the still air like the first note of a song. No one yet understood. Priya stepped forward, hands clasped behind her back. "We'll start simple. Environmental awareness without technology. How many of you can estimate wind speed within 2 miles per hour using only observation?" Several hands rose cautiously. Hayes raised his first, with the confidence of someone who thought he knew what was coming. "And how many can differentiate between thermal mirage and actual atmospheric turbulence?" Priya continued. Fewer hands this time, a few glances exchanged. The answers weren't as sure anymore. "Last question," she said quietly. "How many can identify a human presence at 800 meters using only sound signature, in a noisy environment?" No hands. Silence. Sutherland shifted uncomfortably. "With respect, ma'am, that's not humanly possible." Priya looked at him, not dismissively but like a teacher studying a student. "It's not impossible, just undeveloped. You've trained your eyes your entire careers. We're going to train your other senses, the ones you've ignored." She turned to a covered table and pulled away a tarp. The SEALs expected advanced military gear, sensors, optics, maybe prototype tech. Instead, they saw a strange collection of handmade tools, wind indicators crafted from paracord and feathers, acoustic mapping devices built from scavenged parts, range estimation charts drawn by hand. "This looks like a survival course," Hayes said under his breath. "That's intentional," Olivia replied. "During certain operations, we couldn't use electronics, couldn't risk detection, couldn't rely on batteries or data, so we built what we needed from what we had. We learned to read the world like a system that never lies." Stone stepped closer, studying one of the makeshift devices, a simple metal rod with thin ribbon streamers. "And this taught you to make those shots yesterday." "This," Olivia said, "taught me to understand the wind better than any digital sensor ever could." They began the day's first exercise, wind reading. No rifles, no scopes, just observation. Each operator stood in silence, facing the open range, forced to read the movement of air by sight and touch. Some crouched, picking up sand to watch it drift. Others tried to measure flag angles, comparing mental estimates to reference boards. But there was no immediate success, no satisfaction, just uncertainty. Hours passed like this. Washington was the first to start adapting, slow, methodical. Callahan followed, his experience allowing him to detect subtle shifts. Hayes, on the other hand, fidgeted, his patience thinning by the minute. "This feels pointless," he muttered. "We're supposed to be shooting, not staring at dirt." Sutherland finally broke his silence. "Ma'am, with all due respect, we're trained marksmen. We've spent years mastering this. Watching wind flags for 4 hours feels like a step backward." Olivia looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Chief Sutherland, come with me." The others turned, watching as she led him away to an isolated section of the range. There 3 targets waited, each partially obscured by terrain. 3 rifles sat on the ground, identical except for one difference. One had full digital support, one a standard optical scope, one bare iron sights. "Take a shot at any target," Olivia instructed. "Use whatever you like." Sutherland settled behind the first rifle, using electronic rangefinding. His first 2 shots hit, the third barely. A good group, solid work. "Now," Olivia said, "do it again without electronics." He frowned but complied, switching to the optical scope. The results dropped, still decent, but inconsistent. "Now," she said softly, "without a scope at all." He looked up sharply. "Iron sights, that's not." "Humor me." He sighed, adjusted, fired 3 times, all missed. Olivia didn't gloat. She simply stepped forward, took his position, loaded the same rifle. Her voice was quiet, steady as stone. "Winds 7 miles per hour left to right, gusting to 9. Mirage creates a false shift right to left at 800. Terrain depression changes the angle by 2 degrees. 3 shots, 3 hits, all center mass." Sutherland stared at the monitor, disbelief crossing his face. "How?" "Because I don't need a computer to read the world," she said gently. "You rely on your tools. We learn to rely on ourselves." Her tone wasn't prideful, it was patient, like someone trying to teach a truth instead of win an argument. She stood, cleared the weapon, and looked at him directly. "Technology makes you better until it fails. Then what are you?" For a moment neither spoke. The wind carried silence across the range. Then Sutherland nodded, a small gesture of something new, understanding. They returned to the group, and this time when Sutherland resumed the exercise, his approach had changed. He didn't rush, he observed. By late morning, something subtle began to shift. The frustration started giving way to curiosity. Washington found patterns in the way heat shimmered. Callahan began teaching Hayes how to feel air pressure changes across his cheeks. Even Stone, who had kept quiet most of the morning, was scribbling notes. When they finally broke for water, sweat and dust mixed across their uniforms. They were tired but alert in a different way. "This," Priya said during the break, isn't about your weapons, it's about perception. You can't shoot what you can't sense. The second half of the day pushed them harder. Thermal distortion identification, acoustic isolation drills, visual deception exercises. It was sensory overload by design, a storm of information that forced them to rewire how they processed the world. By 1600 hours, the group gathered for debriefing in the range classroom. The air smelled faintly of cordite and heat. Priya stood at the front. Today was designed to frustrate you, to slow you down, to make you feel unskilled, because that's where learning actually begins when comfort ends. Washington raised a hand. Ma'am, how long did it take you to develop these skills operationally? Olivia exchanged a look with Priya before answering. Years, and the cost was high. We learned through failure, through necessity. You won't have to if you commit. Hayes, slumped in his chair, exhaled. And if we do? Then you'll fail in the field, Priya said simply, and someone else will die for it. No one spoke after that. Finally, Commander Stone stood. His tone had changed since the morning, quieter, steadier. Captain, Lieutenant, today challenged us in ways we didn't expect, but we're committed. We'll do this right. Olivia nodded. Good, because tomorrow we integrate it with live fire. As the men began to file out, Petty Officer Brooks lingered. He hesitated before speaking, his jaw tight. Ma'am, I don't mean disrespect, but how much of this is tactically necessary? And how much is political? Is this about proving that women can train SEALs? Olivia studied him for a long moment. That's a fair question. She walked toward him, her voice soft but unflinching. Politics built the program. Reality sustains it. What we're teaching doesn't care about gender, rank, or headlines. It works, or it doesn't. The proof is in results. She stepped closer, lowering her tone. You want to know if this is real. You'll know when you make a shot without seeing the target and you hit it anyway. Brooks said nothing, but something in his eyes shifted, not acceptance yet, but respect. When he finally left, Priya appeared beside her, arms crossed. He's going to be the hardest one. Maybe, Olivia said, but he's honest. I'll take honest resistance over quiet compliance any day. The last light of day spilled across the classroom wall, painting everything in the color of fading fire. They stood there a while longer, silent. Two soldiers who'd spent years in shadows, now fighting a quieter battle, not for recognition, but for change. Because they knew what the others didn't yet. That excellence isn't about pride, it's about awareness. And awareness, when trained right, never misses. How do you teach calm inside chaos? By dawn, the wind had changed, fierce and unpredictable. The range looked different now. Storm clouds gathered low across the horizon, heavy with sand and salt. The Pacific air had turned electric. A storm was coming, the kind that made even the ground vibrate with unease. For Captain Olivia Brennan, it was perfect. She stood beside the command trailer, coffee cooling in her hand, eyes scanning the shifting sky. Every soldier hates bad weather. Every sniper learns to love it, because chaos reveals truth. When the air turns ugly, only discipline survives. At 700, the SEALs arrived. Their faces told the story of yesterday, exhaustion mixed with determination. Commander Garrett Stone led the group, jaw set, eyes steady. The doubts were gone now. Whatever resentment lingered had hardened into focus. Morning, Captain, he greeted, wind tugging at his uniform. Morning, Olivia replied. You ready to get uncomfortable? He gave a faint smile, already there. Beside her, Lieutenant Priya Desai was setting up a board covered in terrain photos and grid coordinates. Each line, each mark, represented a kill zone, a crosswind angle, a variable too small for most to notice, but deadly if ignored. All right, listen up, Olivia began, voice cutting through the rising wind. Today isn't about accuracy, it's about control. The wind will lie to you, the light will blind you, the terrain will shift your perception. You'll think you're missing because of the weather, but it'll be because you lost focus." The SEALs exchanged looks. They weren't used to this kind of briefing. Usually, training was structured, predictable, but this sounded like survival. "Your mission," she continued, "is simple. 6 targets, unknown distances, random elevation. You have 1 hour to locate, identify, and engage all of them. No digital rangefinders, no stabilizers, only your senses, your notes, and your partner." Washington frowned. "Partner?" Priya nodded. "You'll work in pairs, spotter and shooter. Roles switch halfway. You succeed or fail together." Stone raised an eyebrow. "Who's spotting for you?" Olivia's eyes flicked toward Priya. "We always spot for each other." That small answer carried weight. Years of trust condensed into a single line. Every operator in that formation felt it, the silent partnership between 2 soldiers who had survived more than most could imagine. "Form your teams," Olivia ordered. "Clock starts in 10. The air thickened with motion as the SEALs broke off into pairs. Gear checks, murmured calculations, quiet confidence fighting creeping doubt. The storm winds picked up, kicking sand across the range like tiny razors. By the time the horn sounded, visibility had dropped to half. The exercise had begun. The first hour was chaos. The wind howled like a living thing, bending the flags until they cracked. Dust tore at the skin, stinging eyes, clogging scopes. Every shot required recalibration, every breath a battle. "Target 2, 800 meters, Washington called, squinting through the blur. "Wind drift 4 clicks left." Hayes adjusted his rifle, teeth gritted. "Got it, firing." The rifle kicked back. The sound was lost in the wind. They waited. "Miss," Washington said. "Low, you compensated too much." "Can't see the damn mirage through this dust," Hayes snapped. "That's the point," came Olivia's voice behind them. She had appeared silently, cloak of calm in the storm. "Mirage is gone, you have to listen. The wind's changed tone, hear it." They paused. The howling seemed the same until they listened deeper. The frequency had dropped just slightly. "Southwest gusts now," she said softly. 3 degrees shift. Read it with your ears. Don't fight it, adjust." Hayes adjusted, fired again. A metallic ping answered across the range. "Hit," Washington said, stunned. Olivia gave a small nod, then moved on without another word. Farther down the line, Sutherland and Callahan were struggling with Target 4, the high ridge silhouette. The distance was deceptive, the light fractured. Every shot went wide. "Elevation, off," Sutherland muttered. "Can't be more than 1,500. "Try 17, Callahan said, peering through his scope. "The light's refracting. You're aiming into distortion." "Refracting?" Sutherland frowned. "You mean?" "Yeah," Priya's voice cut in. She'd been observing silently from behind. "That shimmer you're seeing, it's not distance. It's heat refraction bending light. Adjust your mental estimate, not your scope." They followed her instruction. This time the bullet hit dead center. It wasn't just skill, it was humility meeting guidance. By midday, the storm peaked. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. The range monitors flickered in static. Sand scraped across metal like whispers. Most of the SEALs had stopped talking altogether, saving energy, focusing on breathing and motion. Olivia and Priya moved like ghosts among them, quietly correcting, observing, challenging. Not once did they shout. They didn't need to. Authority radiated from control, not volume. At one point, Commander Stone approached Olivia during a short lull. His face was streaked with dirt, eyes burning with curiosity. "How do you stay this calm?" he asked, wiping his brow. "This kind of weather eats at your head." Olivia looked toward the horizon, where lightning flickered faintly over the sea. "You stop fighting it," she said. "You stop trying to control what won't listen. You align yourself with it instead." He followed her gaze. "That's not training, that's something else." "It's survival," she said. "In Afghanistan, we called it ghost focus. when you stop hearing your own heartbeat, when the world stops arguing with you. Stone watched her, the realization settling in this wasn't technique. It was philosophy, a way of being. She turned back toward him, voice quieter now. The hardest part of becoming better isn't learning something new. It's letting go of what you think you already know. He nodded slowly. I get that now. For the first time, there was no distance in his tone, just respect. Hours passed. One by one, the teams started finding rhythm in the storm. Washington and Hayes hit 4 of 6, Callahan and Sutherland 5, Brooks and O'Neill 4 with improving precision. But fatigue began to show. Small mistakes crept in, overcompensation, missed cues, emotional cracks, the kind of failures that separate good soldiers from enduring ones. At 1600, the exercise ended. The range was silent again, except for the wind. The teams gathered for debriefing, eyes red from sand and exhaustion. Priya stood at the front, clipboard in hand. Out of 12 teams, 9 achieved at least 60% accuracy. 4 exceeded 80%. One team, she paused, scanning her notes, scored perfect. All eyes turned toward Stone and Washington, standing at the back. They hadn't expected it. Neither had anyone else. Stone's face barely changed, just the faintest flicker of surprise, then reflection. Guess we're starting to see the world your way, he said. Olivia smiled faintly. That's the goal. They moved inside to the briefing room. The storm still rumbled outside, thunder rolling across the hills. Inside, the room felt oddly calm, as if the chaos had burned away everything unnecessary. Olivia placed a map on the table. You all did well today, but there's something you need to understand. In combat, there's no scoreboard. There's only consequence. The storm doesn't care how good you are. It only respects awareness. She paused, letting the words sink in. What you fought today wasn't the weather. It was yourselves. Brooks raised a hand. You really think all that listening, feeling, adjusting can apply under fire, when adrenaline's pumping and bullets are flying? Olivia's voice dropped. That's the only time it matters. In calm, anyone can aim. In chaos, only awareness can save you. Priya leaned against the table, her tone softer now. Every sniper we've ever trained has broken at least once, some from exhaustion, some from doubt. But the ones who survive are the ones who stay still, even when everything inside screams to move. The room was silent. No one argued this time. Outside, thunder rolled again. Olivia glanced at the window, the reflection of her own face merging with lightning for a moment. It reminded her of something, a memory she rarely touched. Afghanistan, the Ridgeline mission, 28 hours in position, wind that felt alive, and a decision she still carried every night in silence. Stone's voice broke her reverie. Captain, he said quietly, you've been where this kind of focus isn't optional, haven't you? She looked at him, then away. Everyone who's still breathing has. Her voice trembled just slightly, barely enough to notice, but enough to feel. The others sensed it. A brief moment where the legend turned human again, and maybe that's what made them respect her most. That night the storm broke. The air turned cool, rain washing away the dust. Floodlights reflected in puddles across the range, like scattered stars on wet ground. Olivia stood alone outside the hangar, hood pulled up, watching the rain fall. She could still hear the echo of every shot from the day, still feel the vibration in her bones. Priya joined her quietly, holding 2 cups of coffee. You did well with them, she said. We did, Olivia corrected. They're learning faster than I expected. Priya handed her the coffee, watching the rain bounce off the metal railing. You think they're ready for what's next? Not yet, Olivia said. Tomorrow we start endurance integration, real-time stress firing, moving targets, night ops. Priya smiled faintly. You never make it easy. It wasn't easy for us, Olivia said softly. Why should it be for them? They stood in silence a long time. The kind of silence that only exists between people who have already said everything that matters. Finally, Priya spoke again, her voice low. "Do you ever wonder why you still do this, after everything?" Olivia didn't answer right away. Her eyes stayed fixed on the rain, her reflection fragmented in the puddles below. "Because once you've seen how fragile peace is," she said finally, "you spend the rest of your life trying to protect it, even if no one thanks you for it." Priya nodded, quiet understanding in her gaze. The thunder faded in the distance, leaving only the sound of rain. It felt almost sacred, cleansing, honest. Tomorrow would bring harder tests, new lessons, more resistance. But tonight the range was still, the war paused for breath. And somewhere deep in that silence, Olivia's voice echoed softly, a truth she never said aloud but carried in every motion. Sometimes strength isn't about the storm you survive. It's about the calm you create inside it. How do you see when the world turns black? The desert was quiet again, too quiet. The storm that had shaken the range hours earlier had left the air clean but unnervingly still. The wind was gone, replaced by a silence so absolute it pressed on the skin like weight. It was nearly midnight, and the range had changed. No lights, no moon, only shadows, endless, shifting, alive. From a distance, the figures looked like ghosts moving across the terrain. SEAL teams, crawling, scanning, whispering into the dark. Their rifles glinted only when lightning far offshore flashed. Watching from the command tent, Captain Olivia Brennan traced their movement across the infrared monitor. Every now and then, she would make a note on her pad, small observations. Callahan off-center by 4 degrees. Washington adjusting too fast. Brooks hesitating before breath control. "Second phase already stressing them," Lieutenant Priya Desai said beside her. Her voice was calm, but her eyes tracked the screens with surgical precision. "Some of them are compensating too early for darkness instead of adapting to it." Olivia didn't look away from the monitor. Good. They need to get lost before they can learn to find their way. Outside, thunder muttered faintly, miles away over the sea. This wasn't just night training. It was disorientation training. And Olivia knew what disorientation did to people. It stripped away the layers of discipline and rank until only instinct remained. The moment between fear and focus, that's where real skill was born. At exactly 0 hours, she stepped out of the tent. The desert night swallowed her instantly. She moved silently through the dark, boots whispering over the sand. The air smelled faintly of cordite and rain. From somewhere to her left, a rifle cracked. A second later, another, followed by an echo of curses. "Missed the silhouette," a voice hissed. "Couldn't see the damn shadow move." Olivia crouched behind a low berm, scanning with naked eyes. No night vision, no scope, just instinct. After a moment she saw it, the faint shimmer of breath where a man was lying in the dark, too still, too tense. The target was right in front of them, barely visible in the pale starlight. She didn't speak, she waited. Finally she heard it, the sound of a soldier realizing his mistake too late. The shot rang out again, missed by inches. "Wind shifted," the shooter said. Olivia stepped forward out of the dark. "No, you shifted." The man startled, lowering his rifle. "Ma'am." "You felt the dark closing in and you panicked," she said. "Darkness doesn't change the target, it changes you. You start hearing things that aren't there, seeing ghosts. That's when precision dies." She knelt beside him, her tone soft but cutting. "Don't fight the dark, become part of it." Then she stood and disappeared into it again, as if she'd never been there. 200 meters away, Commander Stone lay prone beside Chief Callahan, the pair positioned behind a low ridge. The wind had stilled completely now. Every sound carried the scrape of a rifle bolt, the distant crunch of boots on grit. "I can't see a damn thing," Callahan muttered. "Scope's useless with this haze." "Then stop using it," Stone whispered back. "Breathe, let your eyes adjust." He started to sound like her now, Olivia. Short sentences, calm rhythm. It wasn't imitation, it was instinct creeping in. He closed his eyes for 3 seconds, then opened them again. The shadows shifted, outlines forming faint but real. The horizon was no longer a void. It was a map. There, he said softly, pointing. Half-hidden silhouette, 11 o'clock, 200 meters. Callahan adjusted, fired. The target clanged. Hit. A low grin broke across his face. Well, I'll be damned. Stone exhaled slowly. Feels different, doesn't it? Feels quiet. That's the point. He didn't say it out loud, but for the first time, Stone understood what Olivia had been trying to teach all along. Awareness wasn't a skill. It was surrender. By 200 hours, half the teams were still crawling through the range. The rain had returned, light, cold, relentless. The desert floor turned slick, the mud swallowing every step with a soft sound that seemed louder than thunder. In the darkness, the line between training and memory blurred. For Olivia, it was impossible not to think of Helmand Province, 4 years ago. Another night, another rain, another silence. She could still feel it, the way the mountain wind had cut through her gloves, how the radio hissed with interference. She'd been perched on a cliffside with Priya, waiting for an extraction signal that never came. 2 hostiles inbound, West Ridge, Priya had whispered. Hold, Olivia had said. But the signal never came. Instead, gunfire had split the valley open. The sound of it, raw, metallic, real, still haunted her sleep. She remembered the shot she took that night, one that ended a life but saved 6 others. The price of survival was guilt. You learned to live with it, but it never left. A flash of lightning snapped her back to the present. The range was alive again, rifle cracks echoing, voices calling positions. The SEALs were adapting faster now. Washington had learned to use the echoes to calculate direction. Hayes had stopped fighting his breathing and started timing it. Sutherland had stopped talking entirely. His silence became his focus. Priya appeared beside Olivia, rain streaking down her hood. They're finding rhythm, she said. They're learning to listen, Olivia replied. It's the hardest lesson of all. Priya gave her a long look. You okay? Olivia hesitated. Sometimes, when it's this dark, it doesn't feel like a range anymore. Priya nodded. She knew exactly what she meant. At 300, the final test began. 6 targets, 0 illumination, 2 moving, 2 auditory, 2 decoy. Each team had 10 minutes to find and hit all 6 using only sensory input. Failure wasn't scored, it was felt. The first teams went intense, overthinking. Shots went wild, decoys fooled them. The dark swallowed confidence whole. Then came Stone and Washington. They crawled through mud in silence, each step a whisper. They'd stopped trying to control their environment hours ago. Now they flowed with it. Washington paused, raising one finger. The faint clink of metal echoed somewhere ahead. Not the wind, not the rain, a sound of movement. He didn't look through his scope. He just aimed by instinct, by rhythm, and fired. Hit. Stone covered left, watching shadows through rain streaks. One moved slightly, unnaturally. He fired. Hit. They found all 6 targets in 7 minutes flat. No chatter, no panic, only awareness. When they finished, Olivia was standing near the range gate, watching through the downpour. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. Priya recorded the time. 7 minutes, all 6 confirmed. Olivia nodded once. They're getting there. The others began returning, drenched, eyes raw from the cold. They were different now, quieter, sharper, less pride, more presence. Callahan walked past, shaking his head with disbelief. Didn't think I'd ever hit anything I couldn't see. Olivia's reply was barely audible through the rain. Most people never do. Inside the debriefing tent, the air buzzed with residual adrenaline. Mud streaked the floor, steam rose from soaked uniforms, and exhaustion sat heavy on every face. But beneath it, something else flickered: respect. Olivia stood at the front. No lights, just the soft glow of emergency lamps. "What you did tonight," she began, "wasn't about shooting. It was about letting go of control. You can't dominate the dark, you have to move with it." She looked at Stone, then at the others. "The world you train for doesn't give second chances. In the field, night doesn't care who you are. It only cares who's ready to see without seeing." She paused, her voice softened. "4 years ago I was in Helmand, night op, 2 hostages, 20 enemies, no support. I lost half my team before sunrise." The room fell utterly silent. "I tell you this because I made every mistake you made tonight and people paid for it. Awareness isn't instinct. It's built from failure. Every miss, every panic, every hesitation, they cost something. But if you learn from them, they stop being losses. They become clarity." Her gaze swept the room, steady and human. "That's why I'm here, not to show you up, to make sure you don't carry the same ghosts I do." No one moved, not a breath. Finally, Stone stood. His voice was quiet. "With respect, Captain, I think we all carry ghosts. The difference is you've learned how to listen to yours." Olivia's eyes flickered with something like sadness. "Maybe, or maybe they've just learned to stop shouting." Priya placed a hand on her shoulder, a small, grounding gesture. Stone nodded slowly. "We're with you. Wherever this program goes next, we're in." Olivia met his gaze. For the first time since the program began, her face softened into something that almost looked like peace. "Then we start integrating," she said. "Real-time command synchronization, multiple distance firing, variable light, the final phase." He gave a half-smile. "Guess we better rest up." "Rest if you can," Olivia said. "The next test doesn't wait for daylight." Outside, the rain had stopped again. The desert smelled new, washed clean. Floodlights glowed faintly through the mist, casting soft halos on the wet ground. Olivia stepped out alone. She tilted her head back, letting the cool air hit her face. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. The night was still again, but this time she wasn't afraid of the silence. She whispered, almost to herself, "The dark doesn't hide anything. It just waits for who's willing to see." And as the wind picked up again, carrying the sound of waves from far off the coast, one thought settled quietly in her chest. Sometimes clarity doesn't arrive with light. It comes when you finally stop fearing the dark. What happens when training stops feeling like training? The morning sky was colorless, pale gray, washed out by the sea mist rolling over Fort Crescent. It was the last phase of the program, but nobody felt ready. The silence inside the barracks was heavy. Boots hit the floor slower. Coffee went cold, untouched. The men moved differently now, deliberate, quiet, thoughtful. They weren't the same team that had mocked 2 Army officers a week ago. They'd been stripped down and rebuilt, piece by piece, failure by failure. Commander Garrett Stone laced his boots at his bunk and glanced at the clock. 600 hours. Outside, thunder murmured again. The weather never seemed to leave this place, like it was part of the training itself. He looked at his reflection in the mirror above the sink, mud-streaked uniform, hollow eyes, and something new behind them. Respect, resolve, a little fear. "Today's the final phase," Chief Sutherland said from behind him, slinging his vest over one shoulder. "You think they'll actually make it look like combat?" Stone zipped his jacket. "If I know Brennan, it'll feel worse." He was right. By 700, the range had been transformed. The once familiar firing ground now looked like a war zone. Burned vehicles, mock buildings, smoke rising from hidden generators. The faint smell of diesel and gunpowder hung in the air. Captain Olivia Brennan stood at the operations table, rain jacket pulled tight against the wind. Beside her, Lieutenant Priya Desai scrolled through mission parameters on a tablet. Behind them, Sergeant Ramirez ran communications checks. The entire setup pulsed with realism. It wasn't just another drill. It was an environment, a simulation of chaos. Today, Olivia began, voice carrying across the open field, is your final integration exercise. You'll operate as two mixed teams combining SEAL and Army methodology. Objective: rescue two hostages from an occupied compound. She pointed toward the mock structures. The targets are positioned in the central building. Enemy combatants are scattered across the area, hidden, mobile, unpredictable. Some will fire, some will decoy. Your job isn't to eliminate them, it's to think, to adapt, to protect. She paused. And one more thing, communication channels will be jammed halfway through. When that happens, you'll have to rely on instinct and coordination, not command. Stone exhaled slowly. That's cruel. Priya's voice was soft, almost kind. That's combat. Olivia turned back to the teams. You've been taught awareness, discipline, patience. Now we see what survives under pressure. The wind picked up, the fog thickened. The horn sounded. The first 10 minutes were smooth, almost too smooth. Stone's team moved in from the South Ridge, silent, controlled, synchronized. Washington on point, Callahan and Hayes flanking left. Olivia and Priya observed from the control post, eyes on the feeds. They're too comfortable, Priya murmured. Wait, Olivia said quietly. 2 seconds later, a simulated explosion tore through the far building. Dust shot into the air. The team dropped to cover. Radio chatter burst in their ears, loud, panicked, overlapping. Contact front. Visuals down. Smoke blocking the alley. Then static. Just like that, comms died. Olivia didn't move. She just whispered, there it is. On the ground, Stone tapped his earpiece. Comms are down. Callahan visual. But Callahan couldn't hear him. The sound of wind filled his headset. He turned toward Stone for instructions, and that second of hesitation cost them. A paint round struck his vest, splattering blue across his chest. Hit, he shouted, grimacing. Stone's jaw tightened. He motioned to reposition. They began moving along the ridge line using hand signals only. The fog was thicker now, reducing visibility to 30 meters. Every shadow looked alive, every sound threat. They found the first hostage, a dummy target tied to a pole inside a half-collapsed structure. But something felt off, too easy. Washington scanned the perimeter. Sir, this setup's wrong. No guard, no trip lines, feels like bait. Stone hesitated, the kind of hesitation that only happens once before you learn never to do it again. A crack split the silence. Another paint round hit Washington in the shoulder, then another grazed Stone's arm. Ambush. They dove for cover behind debris. Shots echoed through the fog, disorienting, surrounding, deliberate. The enemy wasn't attacking head-on. They were hunting. From the observation post, Olivia's voice came low through the internal mic to Priya. They've lost cohesion. Priya frowned. Stone's good, but he's defaulting to reaction. They're thinking defense, not flow. Exactly, Olivia said. That's what we change. On the field, Stone took a deep breath. His mind was racing, trying to remember every principle they'd been taught over the past week. Wind, sound, stillness, awareness. He closed his eyes for half a heartbeat and listened. He heard it, faint movement to the east, crunch of gravel, slow, measured, not random. He turned, 3 o'clock move. Callahan and Hayes followed instantly, sweeping right through the dust. A silhouette appeared in the mist, a target figure armed with simunition. 2 shots, 2 hits. Enemy down. They regrouped behind the low wall. Their breathing slowed. Something was shifting. They weren't just reacting anymore. They were adapting. Olivia and Priya watched it happen from afar. See that, Priya said softly. He's listening now. Olivia's eyes didn't leave the screen. He's learning to see what's not there. By the 40-minute mark, both teams had converged near the central building. The air was thick with smoke, visibility near zero. Inside the mock structure, the hostages were positioned under flickering red lights. The atmosphere was almost cruel in its realism, every shadow, every sound an echo of real war. Stone led his team through the doorway, rifle up, scanning corners. The second team, Sutherland and Washington, covered the exterior. Then came the twist. As they reached the central room, two shapes emerged from the smoke, friendly uniforms. "Hostages located," Washington called out, "both secured." But Olivia's voice came through the observer mic, cold, clear, absolute. "Negative, those aren't hostages." Too late. The two figures lifted rifles and fired. Blue rounds hit Stone square in the chest. Another struck Callahan in the side. The feed blinked red. Team 1 compromised, Ramirez confirmed. Priya exhaled. Decoy insertion worked. Olivia's expression stayed neutral. They'll remember that mistake. An hour later, the exercise ended. The smoke cleared. The range was silent again. The teams gathered near the command post, faces streaked with sweat and blue paint. No one looked proud. Olivia stood before them, hands in her pockets. "You failed the objective," she said simply. "Both hostages terminated within 30 minutes. 3 operators eliminated. 1 crossfire incident. Communications collapse at minute 11. Her words landed heavy. Hayes muttered, "That was rigged from the start." Olivia's gaze snapped to him, "So is war." The silence that followed wasn't shame, it was understanding. She walked closer, voice softening. "What you experienced today wasn't failure. It was revelation. You don't lose because you're bad. You lose because you think you're still in control when you're not. Combat isn't fair. It doesn't reward precision. It rewards adaptation." She turned toward the smoke-stained compound. "Every mistake today is a mistake you'll never make again. That's how professionals are made." Stone stepped forward. "Captain," he said, his voice quiet but steady, "you were right about everything. The weather, the silence, the dark, it's all the same lesson, awareness." Olivia nodded, "And?" He exhaled, "And awareness starts where ego ends." That made her smile small but real. "Then you're ready for the last truth." She looked at them, these soldiers who had doubted her, then followed her into chaos. "The hardest target you'll ever face isn't a person. It's the moment you realize you're not invincible. Once you accept that, you stop missing." The group stood silent. The lesson didn't need applause, it just needed to sink in. Priya stepped beside her, folding her arms. "You know," she said quietly, "for a failed mission, they look more alive than they did last week." Olivia's eyes softened, because for the first time they understand. Later, when the range was empty, Olivia stayed behind. The sky had started clearing, the last of the smoke drifting into the sea breeze. She walked to the middle of the compound, the same place the fake hostages had stood, and knelt. She ran a hand across the dirt floor, now scattered with shell casings and footprints. Priya approached from behind, quiet as always. "You're still here," she said softly. "I wanted to feel it," Olivia replied. "The aftermath." Priya crouched beside her. "You're thinking about Helmand again, aren't you?" Olivia didn't deny it. Every operation has an echo. You can teach skill, you can't teach peace. They sat in silence for a long time, the wind tugging at their jackets. "You think they'll ever understand what this training really was?" Priya asked. "Maybe," Olivia said. "One day, when they're alone in the field and it's quiet and no one's watching, they'll remember how it felt to fail safely, and they'll realize it saved them." Priya looked out across the range, "And us?" Olivia smiled faintly. "We'll move to the next unit, teach again, keep them alive, that's our mission now." Priya nodded, "Not glory." "No," Olivia whispered, "legacy." The waves crashed faintly in the distance, steady and timeless. The day was ending, but something deeper had begun, not victory, not defeat, but understanding. And as the sun broke weakly through the fog, Olivia stood, brushing dirt from her gloves. "Let's go," she said softly. "We've done what we came to do." Priya fell into step beside her, the two of them walking toward the rising light. Behind them, the training ground lay quiet, marked by failure, yes, but also by growth. Because sometimes, the lesson isn't about who hits every target. It's about who keeps aiming when everything falls apart. What happens when the lesson becomes the battlefield? 2 weeks after the exercise, the wind at Fort Crescent carried a different sound: helicopters. The base that had felt like a classroom now felt like a launch pad. Orders had come down overnight. Real operation, real stakes. Captain Olivia Brennan stood on the flight line with her gear strapped tight, eyes half closed against the rotor wash. Lieutenant Priya Desai adjusted the sling on her rifle, double-checking the optics. Around them moved the same SEALs who had once doubted them. There was no doubt left now, only focus. Commander Garrett Stone walked over, tablet in hand. "Intel confirmed. A CIA asset's gone dark in the Corvan Basin. Possible hostage situation. We insert at 200. Extraction before sunrise." He paused, searching Olivia's face. "Command wants you and Desai on Overwatch. I told them you'd do it." Olivia nodded once. "You'll have our eyes." She didn't need to say more. The look they exchanged carried everything: trust built from failure, the kind that doesn't require words. By nightfall, the desert stretched out beneath them, endless dunes broken by ridgelines like frozen waves. The helicopter dropped low, skimming the ground to avoid radar. Inside, red lights painted every face in muted scarlet. Stone checked his watch. LZ Delta in 3 minutes. Washington and Sutherland loaded mags. Callahan tightened his harness. Priya glanced at Olivia. "Feels familiar, doesn't it?" Olivia gave a faint smile. "That's what scares me." When the bird touched down, they spilled into the cold night. The rotors faded, leaving only the hiss of sand. The sky was black velvet, the stars sharp enough to hurt. Olivia and Priya moved uphill toward their Overwatch position, a jagged ridge overlooking the valley compound where the hostages were believed to be held. Below, faint lights flickered in the ruins of an abandoned refinery. "Wind 2 knots west," Priya whispered, unpacking her scope. "Distance 1240. Mirage moderate," Olivia replied. "Good lines of sight on both approaches." They settled in, rifles aligned, breathing slow. At 2:07, the SEALs began their approach. Small shapes cutting through the dark, moving like shadows. The radio was calm, clipped, professional. "Bravo 1 to Overwatch, crossing first gate." "Copy," Olivia murmured. "2 heat signatures on your 12, both armed, stationary." "Seen," Stone replied. 2 muffled pops answered from below, suppressed shots, clean and quiet. "Clear." Minutes passed. The rhythm of the operation flowed perfectly, every motion an echo of what they'd practiced, until something shifted. Priya frowned into her scope. Movement north of compound. 3 figures, no comms tags. Olivia adjusted focus. The shapes were wrong, slow, heavy, deliberate. "They're not patrols," she whispered. "They're setting up positions." "Ambush," Priya said. Olivia keyed her mic. "Bravo team, freeze. You've got company flanking from North Ridge, 200 meters out." "Negative visual," Stone replied. "You will in 10 seconds." The first tracer ripped through the dark like a comet, then another, then chaos. Contact north." Bullets tore the sand around the SEALs as they dove for cover. From the ridge, Olivia's rifle cracked, a single, perfect sound that cut through the storm. One hostile dropped. Priya's shot followed a breath later. Another fell. But there were more, too many. "Bravo team, pull back to south wall," Stone ordered. "Can't," Washington grunted. "We're pinned." Olivia's jaw clenched. "We're repositioning." They shifted along the ridge, crawling through shale. Dust cut their palms, but they didn't stop. Every move was muscle memory, the kind learned through exhaustion and failure. Priya reached a new angle, got eyes. "Take it," Olivia whispered. The night erupted again, precision thunder. Each shot deliberate, measured, echoing the training that had begun on a calm California morning. Below, the SEALs began moving again, one after another, using the gaps the snipers carved open for them. It was coordination born not from command, but from understanding. Stone's voice came through the static. "We're in the main structure. 2 hostages located, extracting now." Olivia exhaled. Relief flickered but didn't last. Because then the power died. The compound lights blinked out, leaving total black. A heartbeat later, the comms filled with static. "Bravo team, confirm." Olivia began, but the line went dead. The next minute stretched like hours. No visual, no contact, just silence and wind. Priya's pulse pounded in her ears. "We lost them." Olivia scanned the valley, nothing but darkness. She felt that old pull in her chest again, the one that dragged her back to Helmand. Waiting, listening, hoping the radio would come alive again. And then faintly, a whisper through static. "2 down, extraction route blocked, need." The signal cut. Olivia's decision was instant. "We're moving." Priya turned to her. "If we leave the ridge, they lose Overwatch." "They already lost it," Olivia said. "We're no good up here if they're dying down there." They slid down the slope, boots digging into the shale, rifles strapped tight. The valley swallowed them, dust, heat, heartbeat. They reached the perimeter wall. The gunfire was closer now, echoing between the metal ruins. "Stone," Olivia called into her comms, voice low but sharp. "Talk to me." A whisper came back, strained, breathless. "North corridor, pinned, Washington's hit." "Hold position," Olivia said. "We're inbound." She moved like she was back in the war zone, every footstep deliberate, every shadow assessed. Priya covered angles, silent and efficient. They breached the side entrance. Inside, the world was a nightmare of red emergency lights and smoke. 2 SEALs crouched behind a fallen beam, firing toward a flickering hallway. One of them, Washington, clutched his shoulder, blood soaking through his sleeve. Olivia dropped beside him, applying pressure. "Stay still." Stone appeared through the haze. "Hostages secure, extraction blocked by debris." "Then we make a new exit," Olivia said. She turned to Priya. "Thermal charge." Priya pulled a small demolition pack from her vest, setting it against a crumbling side wall. The timer blinked. "Fire in 3, 2, 1." The blast punched a hole through the outer wall, spraying dust and light. Air flooded in, cold, clean, alive. "Move," Stone shouted. They carried the hostages through the opening, emerging into the open desert. The wind was fierce again, but it felt like freedom. "Overwatch copies." Ramirez's voice finally crackled through the comms. "Bird inbound, 2 minutes." Olivia looked back toward the compound. Smoke rose behind them, curling into the sky like a ghost. They'd survived barely. The extraction helicopter lifted off, rotors thundering. Inside, the cabin was chaos, bandages, shouting relief. Priya sat across from Olivia, mud streaked across her face. She smiled faintly through exhaustion. "You broke every protocol." Olivia met her eyes. "So did they." Stone leaned forward from the opposite seat. His uniform was torn, his hands shaking. "You saved us." Olivia shook her head. "No, you saved yourselves. We just reminded you how." The helicopter banked east, rising above the ridgeline. Below, the valley glowed faintly from the burning compound, small and distant now, like a bad dream fatting at dawn. Stone looked at her for a long moment. "You ever stop thinking?" "About what?" "About the ones you couldn't save." Olivia didn't answer right away. She looked out the window, at the stars, at the dark, at the endless horizon. "Every day," she said quietly, "but thinking isn't the same as breaking." Priya rested her head against the bulkhead, eyes half closed. Sometimes, she murmured, the only way to make peace with the past is to keep earning it. No one spoke after that. The sound of the rotors filled the silence, steady, rhythmic, like a heartbeat refusing to quit. Hours later, back at Fort Crescent, dawn stretched thin across the sea. The debriefing room was empty except for 3 people. Stone stood at the window, watching gulls trace slow circles over the surf. Olivia and Priya sat across from him, both looking more tired than triumphant. Stone turned. The operations being logged as a success. 2 hostages alive, minimal casualties, commands recommending commendations. Olivia's expression didn't change. We don't do it for ribbons. I know, he said, but I want to say it anyway, thank you. She nodded once, accepting it without ceremony. Priya leaned forward. What about the others, Washington? He'll live, Stone said, already asking when he can train again. Olivia smiled faintly. That's good, means he learned. Stone hesitated, then said quietly, they all did. We all did. What you 2 built here, it's not just a program, it's a mindset, and we'll carry it forward. Olivia met his gaze. That's all we wanted. The room fell silent. Outside, the ocean reflected pale gold light. The world felt still again, the way it only does after violence ends. Finally, Stone spoke, softer now. You ever think about stopping, about leaving all this behind? Olivia considered it. Sometimes, but every time I do, something reminds me why I can't. Why? She looked out at the sea. Because someone somewhere still thinks they're invincible, and until they learn otherwise, we keep teaching. Priya's eyes met hers, quiet agreement. Stone nodded slowly. Then I hope they're ready. Later, when the sun was fully up, Olivia walked alone to the range. The air smelled of salt and gun oil, familiar and grounding. The targets from earlier training still stood, scarred, pitted, but upright. She picked up a rifle, aimed at the farthest steel plate, and fired once. The sound echoed across the empty field, sharp, clean, final. She lowered the weapon, breathing steady. Sometimes, she thought, clarity wasn't about seeing farther. It was about remembering why you aim at all. The wind caught her hair, tugging it gently toward the horizon. Priya's voice echoed in her mind, the only way to make peace is to keep earning it. And she smiled, a small, tired human smile. Because for the first time in years, she felt something close to peace. Not because the war was over, but because she'd finally taught others how to survive it. And somewhere deep inside, beneath all the noise and ghosts and memory, a single truth remained. Sometimes, redemption doesn't come from the battles you win. It comes from the ones you teach others how to survive. Where do soldiers go when the noise finally stops? 3 months had passed since the Corvin extraction. The reports were written, the medals approved, the missions reassigned. On paper it was over. But in the hearts of those who'd lived it, the operation never really ended. It just changed temperature, cooling into memory, hardening into lesson. At Fort Crescent, autumn rolled in slow. The range that once shook with thunder now rested beneath a thin veil of fog. Salt air, wet metal, gulls tracing circles above the coast, it almost looked peaceful. Almost. Captain Olivia Brennan stood alone near the edge of the cliffs, a cup of coffee cooling between her hands. The horizon was an iron line. Every few seconds the wind pushed strands of hair across her face, but she didn't move them away. Stillness had become her ritual, the place she went to remind herself she was still alive. Behind her, footsteps. Lieutenant Priya Desai approached quietly, boots crunching on gravel. She carried 2 folders under one arm, new assignment briefs, sealed in plastic. Orders came through, she said. Command wants us in Norfolk for program expansion. They're building the next phase. Olivia didn't turn. More classrooms. Half classrooms, Priya said. Half-field mentoring, they want you to head it. Olivia took a long sip, eyes still on the horizon. I thought they'd be done with us by now. Priya smiled faintly. You trained an entire SEAL unit that swore they didn't need training. They're not done. They're just beginning. Silence settled again, soft and clean. Waves crashed far below. A gull screamed somewhere out of sight. You ever get tired of teaching? Olivia asked. Priya considered it. Sometimes, but then I remember what it felt like to have no one teach us. She looked at Olivia. That's what keeps me here. Olivia nodded slowly. Yeah, same. They stood side by side, two silhouettes against the gray. The world had tried to break them in different ways, but somehow it had built them instead. Later that day, the hangar filled with noise again, the kind that comes before new beginnings. Fresh recruits moved through equipment lines, voices low, unsure. And there among them were familiar faces: Commander Garrett Stone, Washington, Sutherland, Callahan, and Hayes. Their uniforms bore new patches now, the mark of the Integrated Precision Program. But it was the way they moved that showed the real change. Quieter, more deliberate, eyes constantly scanning the air the way Olivia had taught them. Stone spotted her across the hangar and walked over, carrying a small metal case. Inside, nestled in foam, were 6 spent casings, one from each man in his team, polished to bronze. We wanted you to have these, he said, reminders of the ones that finally hit. Olivia lifted one between her fingers. They're perfect. Stone shook his head. They're not perfect, they're earned. She looked at him for a long moment. There was nothing left of the arrogance that had filled the first day at long-shot range. Only gratitude, quiet and grounded. You did good, Commander, she said softly. So did you, he replied. Then, after a pause, we still talk about that night, Corvin, how calm you were when everything went wrong. Olivia gave a small smile. Calm's just another word for tired. He laughed once, the sound of understanding, not humor. Either way, he said, you changed the way we see the world, that's something. She closed the case gently and handed it back. Keep them, she said. They're yours, you're the ones who made the shots. When the hangar emptied, Olivia walked the length of it alone. Each echo of her boots bounced off the steel walls like memory. She passed the workbenches, the bullet-scarred targets stacked for scrap, the chalkboard still marked with faint equations Priya had drawn months ago. She paused there, tracing one formula with her finger, wind vector against range, the mathematics of chaos. Then she smiled, erased it with the side of her hand and whispered, you can't measure everything. Priya found her there a few minutes later. Stone's team's deploying east, she said. They asked for your blessing. Olivia chuckled. They don't need it. They think they do, Priya said. Humans always look for permission to move on. Olivia leaned against the table. And what about us? Priya hesitated. You're not really asking about Norfolk, are you? No. She exhaled. I'm asking if you ever think we'll get to be ordinary. Priya looked at her, really looked. We stopped being ordinary the moment we chose to stay after everyone else left. Olivia smiled at that, sad but real. Yeah, she said, maybe that's enough. That night rain returned. Soft, slow, almost apologetic. It tapped against the windows of the small on-base quarters where Olivia lived, a rhythm she'd come to depend on. She sat by the desk, writing her final report. Each sentence careful, measured, precise. When she reached the end, she paused over the last line, mission complete. Her pen hovered, then moved again. She added 4 words, but the work continues. She closed the folder and leaned back, letting the rain fill the silence. The knock on her door came just before midnight. Stone again, soaked from the weather, holding a sealed envelope. Intel, he said, Urgent, they want you and Desai brief tomorrow morning, classified op, real world. Olivia took the envelope. You could have sent it through command. I could have, he said, but I wanted to hand it to you myself. We'll be out there again, different valley, same darkness. Thought you'd want to know. She nodded once, thanks. Stone turned to leave, then stopped. He looked back. You ever figure out what drives you? It's not duty, it's not anger, what is it? Olivia thought about it. The sound, she said finally. The sound. The moment after the shot, that silence. It reminds me there's still a world left to protect. Stone didn't speak. He just gave a slow nod, the kind that says I understand, and stepped back into the rain. Morning came pale and cold. The storm had passed, leaving the air washed clean. Olivia walked to the range one last time before leaving for the new assignment. The targets had been replaced, fresh paint, untouched steel. She loaded a single round, settled behind the rifle, and waited. Wind 5 knots east. Humidity 48%. Distance 2,400 meters. She didn't adjust for any of it. She closed her eyes, breathed in, and pulled the trigger. The shot rang across the coast, a sharp, solitary sound that faded into endless quiet. When she opened her eyes, the target was still swaying from impact. Center hit. She smiled, stood, and slung the rifle over her shoulder. Priya was waiting by the jeep, engine idling. You hit it, she asked. Olivia nodded, always do. Priya grinned, then let's go teach them why. They drove away as the sun broke through the clouds, the light catching the wet sand and turning it to gold. Behind them, the echo of that last shot lingered, steady, confident, final. Somewhere deep inside the memory of everyone she'd trained, Stone, Washington, Callahan, Hayes, that echo would live on. In quiet moments before missions. In storms. In the dark. A reminder of what two women had taught them, that awareness saves more lives than aggression ever will. And in the years that followed, those men would pass it on to others, and others after them, until the origin of the lesson blurred into legend. They would call it the ghost method, a discipline born from stillness, carried by silence. No slogans, no heroes, just results. Because in the end, Olivia and Priya hadn't been trying to be remembered. They'd been trying to make remembering unnecessary. And somewhere far away on another range, another pair of recruits would ask, who came up with this technique? And someone would answer, no one knows, it just works. The wind would move again. The rifles would fire. And the world, for a moment, would be perfectly still. In the voiceover, her words would return one last time, low, steady, almost a whisper. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It just acts. It doesn't need to be seen, only felt. And when it finally leaves the room, it leaves the air quieter than before. The screen would fade to black. The sound of a single bullet casing hitting concrete. Then nothing but silence, the kind that means peace.